Welcome to People's Church on this Independence Day. This is a special day to celebrate the creation of our country. Our country was and is imperfect, requiring it to evolve to fit our changing times, just as we each are imperfect and our church is imperfect, facing sometimes overwhelming challenges. Know you are welcome here, despite your imperfections. Together, we have more strength than each of us has alone. We welcome you, no matter your race, previous religious history, gender identification, or who you love. We especially welcome you if you are visiting us for the first time. We only ask that you join us with an open mind and open heart. I'm Bob Davis, a member of the Sunday Services Committee. People's Church is a member congregation of the Unitarian Universalist Association, or UUA. The mission of People's Church is to be a beloved community, embracing and serving our diverse world. Here, we seek truths in the teachings of all major religions, science, philosophy, and the arts. Here, we recognize that examining our lives and assumptions and listening to each other's perspectives are as important as the answers we find and profess. Today, our own Steve Ferguson is leading a discussion entitled A Review of the Church Year and Future Plans. This last year certainly has been challenging for People's Church, requiring us to evolve. Steve is the immediate past president of our Board of Trustees and ably led us through this past pandemic year. Steve is a retired Western Michigan University physics professor. After his short presentation, we will break into small groups to discuss 3 questions he suggested for about 15 minutes. We'll then return together. We'll have time for people from each group to share a main idea or two from one or more of the questions discussed by typing in the chat box found at the bottom of the screen. This is the chat box used to participate in the joys and concerns section. I will then read those responses. We have muted everybody now, but the speakers, in order to minimize extraneous noises, you can unmute yourself during the small group discussions. We have one announcement today. Church member Andrea Huff is currently hospitalized and will be needing rehab for 2 to 3 weeks. She is looking for a temporary home for her sweet cat, Callie. Callie is a calico cat, front declawed. She is healthy and current on her vaccinations. Callie would need a home where she can be indoors and without dogs, since she is afraid of dogs. If you are interested and would be able to help, please contact Daryl Liacano within the next week via email at darylLKL@hotmail.com. Further information was in the Friday blast email from the church, and I will place Daryl's email in the chat box. Now, come let us worship together. Come let us sing.
Ours is no caravan
Every week, we light a chalice at the beginning of our service, symbolizing the creation of sacred space as we focus our thoughts on today's service, putting aside temporarily our daily lists, worries, and cares. If you are willing and able to light a chalice now, I ask that you enter into the chat box where you are lighting your chalice, whether real or symbolic. We light this chalice to find inner peace, love for each other, and faith in ourselves. Also to be welcoming to whomever we meet and kind to all living creatures. So gather around this light of hope as we share this time together. Those were words from the Oberlin, Ohio UU Fellowship. People's people support one another in life, in good times and in difficult times. One of the ways we do this is by taking time out in our service to share important personal milestones and changes impacting our lives, whether joyful or sorrowful. If you have a personal issue you wish to share, enter it along with your name in the chat box, and I will read it and place a stone in the bowl. The mixing ripples of water signify how we are all interconnected. You may also ask that a stone be placed in the bowl without making a statement. I will pause the service recording now in order to maintain privacy. I place extra stones for the joys and sorrows that remain unspoken. Sources of reason and radiance, sources of courage and compassion. Keep watch over those who work or watch or weep this day. May the suffering be soothed. May the weary find rest. May the sick be tended. May the dying and those who love them find peace. May the joyous be shielded. And may all of us know that we are wrapped in a love that surrounds us always, a web that connects us to all that exists. Now a moment of silent meditation. People's church members and friends are generous in so many ways, giving of their time, talent, and treasure. All three of these gifts are crucial to a vibrant church. Yesterday, we had a fine turnout for our Sprucing Up Church Work Party. The giving link is in the chat box. And previously, wasn't a beloved minister once said, "Give until you feel proud." And now some music.
We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know within, and we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. It will be hard, we know, and the road will be muddy and rough, but we'll get there. Heaven knows how we will get
Please join with me in giving thanks. For the countless gifts we each have been given, gifts of life and love and sustenance. We bring these small portions to share in the works of love which none of us can accomplish alone. And now let us sing.
This is my song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace for lands afar and mine. This is my home, the country where my heart is. Here are my hopes, my dreams, my holy shrine. But other hearts in other lands are beating with hopes and dreams as true and high as mine. My country's skies are bluer than the ocean, and sunlight beams on clover leaf and pine. But other lands have sunlight too, and clover, and skies are everywhere as blue as mine. Oh, hear my song, thou God of all the nations, a song of peace for their land and for mine.
As we think about the future year in our discussions coming up, I thought it would be of value to consider what the Unitarian Universalist Association has published. I'm going to read some excerpts from the UUA Guidance on Gathering in Person when COVID-19 subsides, dated June 8, 2021. Many congregation leaders are asking the UUA for guidance in decision-making about when and how to return in-person programs and services. This is a decision that each congregation will need to make on its own unique circumstances. However, we urge congregations to move slowly, with caution, and our deepest values at the center. We encourage you to move with care and humility and a willingness to reverse course if things aren't working or if the virus resurges. UUA recommendations. Moving into the coming year, the UUA recommends that congregations plan for multi-platform operations, known as hybrid. A flexible combination of in-person and online engagement based on the needs and risks of your community. We recommend that the board develop a guiding policy. Our recommendations for congregations are indeed more stringent than schools and businesses that surround you for the following reasons. One, as a community that values inclusion and collective care, we don't want to create in-person situations that inadvertently exclude those at high risk or create situations that force those at higher risk to publicly identify themselves. Decision-making must center on the needs of the most vulnerable. The membership of most UUA congregations is older. 3, Children are not yet eligible to be vaccinated. 4, we do not want congregational staff and ministers to be put at risk on the job. And 5, a fully opened, normal operating congregation can present too many opportunities to spread a highly contagious respiratory virus like COVID-19. Key principles in planning, as read in a letter by Dr. Susan Frederick Gray, president of the UUA. Number 1, as a faith community, we root our decisions at the values of inclusion and consent. It's important that everyone who gathers in person has the ability to consent to do so that no one is forced to choose between their congregation and the safety of themselves or their loved ones. This includes congregational staff and volunteers. Number 2, follow the science. Congregations should follow the latest CDC guidelines and local public health regulations to determine the best ways to move forward as the pandemic recedes. Vaccine distribution remains uneven and inequitable. New and more contagious variants are spreading, and children are not yet eligible for vaccination. Many unanswered questions remain. I can't stress enough the need to proceed with caution in our planning. Next, go slow and be flexible. Now is the time to plan and consult with the people responsible and engaged in your programs. Take time to create shared understanding of the risks. Given the ongoing risks, worship and other large indoor gatherings should not be the first thing we return to in person. Our public health officials have also said that as we begin to have some in-person offerings, we have to be prepared to shift back to all virtual if conditions change. Next, be humane and realistic with expectations of ourselves and others. Remember, the goal is not perfection. The most important values in this time are care and compassion. And one specific, the UUA encourages congregations to maintain a culture of masking while indoors, regardless of vaccination status. In conclusion, as pandemic continues to play out, we Unitarian Universalists will continue to face uncertainty. The best we can do at any given time is to lean into our values as well as draw on the gifts and wisdom of our own people. Know that whatever comes, we as our UUA staff are your partners. So ends the reading.
Good morning. When I got the call asking if I could do a summer service, I was working on the president's report for the annual meeting. And that report was included in the packet for the meeting. Perhaps there are even some compulsive readers who actually read it. Anyway, that report can serve as a starting point for a discussion of the current state and future plans for our church. For several years, Alan Hunt, our treasurer, and his assistants, Barb Davis and Mary Carroll, have given many hours keeping our financial records in order. But they can't go on forever, and it seems unreasonable to expect another volunteer to step into such a big job. Therefore, we have been planning to reorganize our office staff to take on more of this work. When the plague hit, Alan said that his team would carry on for the duration, and we put our plans on hold. We did make one step on our plan when the database manager left, and we replaced her with the bookkeeper. but most of the reorganization remains for the new board. Fortunately, Susan Mordyke has agreed to take over as president, and her professional experience will be very valuable. And so we are reminded of the continuing discussion about the division of work between paid staff and volunteers, and how best to use volunteers without overusing them. Our AV crew did a great job switching us to a Zoom-based Sunday service. We found that folks who were out of town could attend, and we benefited from hearing from other ministers without travel expenses. We enjoyed combined services with other churches. Committees and discussion groups found Zoom to be a real boon, especially on cold winter nights. But a Zoom service lacks the warmth of an in-person service. Attendance was good, but clearly down. Some of our members and friends, either from circumstances or choice, have not been able to participate. It's harder for prospective members to get to know us. And I miss the spontaneous, short conversations that occurred before and after church. And I miss seeing the kids running around. When we get back to in-person services, how do you want to use our AV capabilities and the internet? Should virtual attendance remain an option? Should visiting ministers and performers be projected on our big screen? How can we maintain connection with our out-of-town members and friends? Can we enhance what we are already doing online? We have seen reports that COVID is spread easily when large groups meet in poorly ventilated rooms. That sounds like our Sunday service is an RE program. The Building and Grounds Committee learned that we could mitigate the poor ventilation in the commons by installing germicidal ultraviolet lamps next to the ceiling fans. The fans have been reversed so that they pull air up into the UV illuminated space. We also installed UV lamps in the ventilating ducts in the new building and near the ceiling in the foyer. When we can't move outside into the sunshine, we can bring some of the sunshine indoors. But we can also move outdoors. The RE director is installing shelters so that classes can be held outside, at least until the weather gets really bad. When RE isn't using them, they will be available for other purposes. So what can we do to keep people healthy in our building? COVID variants, seasonal flu, and the common cold will persist. How much risk are we willing to accept? Should we continue with masks, encourage vaccines, move activities outside? How can we do the best job of making it safe without excluding anyone? I've asked more questions than I have answers. Some of the questions involve our minister, Reverend Rachel. As specified in the terms of her sabbatical leave, she has been out of contact with her church, and she will remain out of contact until she returns in mid-July. Then maybe she'll help us answer some of these questions. We have survived a hard year. Whenever a problem arose, we found that a volunteer or a committee or a staff member was working on it. Thank you all. And now we have some time for discussion. Thank you.
We will now be formed into small groups to discuss your choice of 3 questions. These are suggestions only. Feel free to discuss what's most important to you. The questions will be listed in the chat box, but I will read them now. 1, how should we change our Sunday experience to benefit from the internet age? 2, what should we do to keep people healthy in our building? 3, what work should be done by paid staff and what should be done by volunteers? Guidelines for discussion: please speak the truth as you understand it. To avoid inhibiting the flow of discussion, do not interrupt or comment on others' comments until everyone has had a chance to do initial sharing. You should unmute yourselves in the small group discussion. After 15 minutes, when we rejoin each other, we'll have time to read via the chat box a key idea or two from each group. It would be helpful if you select someone to be your scribe for that purpose, but that's not a requirement. Afterwards, we'll sing our closing hymn, followed by an optimal 15-minute Zoom social time. So now it's time for Reed to drop us into some small groups. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Time that we can enter into the chat box some ideas that we talked about, share what our groups did, and spread our knowledge, so to speak, amongst more than just the maybe 5 people that we had in our group, 3 to 5 people. So I'm going to let's see, bring up the chat box and have people enter a little bit. Maybe take a moment here to type something in. So in our little group, our ideas were we wanted to continue the Zoom options. We saw many advantages to that, but needed to also have live interactions again, so that we're hoping that we can figure a way to simultaneously broadcast Zoom services as well as continue live services. Maybe broadcast more widely throughout the church, so if couldn't get the comments wasn't large enough to include everybody, we could have them in different rooms for the service and then get together later to have a coffee hour. We wanted to increase our outdoor services too. Okay, David Greenquist says give people the option of joining via Zoom even if they don't feel comfortable joining in person. Catherine, to everybody, continue Zoom as part of our offerings, mask during services. We need to hire a treasurer, not sure about the other financial staff. This also seems to go back to volunteers to do AV. Do we need other staff? Lori says, talked about how we can use the AV capabilities. We'd like to continue to broadcast on Zoom even when the congregation is meeting in person. Maybe we should upgrade our AV capabilities so we have equipment in various rooms in the church. Could have a specified number of people allowed in the commons, as well as room-specific limits in each room. Maybe have a room at Friendship Village for Zoom. Maybe assign a Zoom buddy for people who need help at Friendship Village. Maybe have separate space for those who want more social distance. Corey says, saw value in continuing the Zoom option, but expressed concern about the drop-off in volunteering. We felt volunteer help with paid staff would best be decided by the paid staff. We're pleased to have a visiting member of the Portage Union Church with our group and to hear what his congregation is doing this time. And Zoom and Friendship Village is a great concept. I think I might have missed from Julie Schneeberger. Be cautious about overworking volunteers. Do multi-platform services using Zoom and outdoor services as weather permits. And Reed commented, I heard comments about somehow helping people actually use Zoom. Stephen Connie, UUA Guidance on wearing masks is good. Sending a positive message to children and others who can't be vaccinated. Sounds like we had some really great discussions. All right. Maybe now it's time for a closing song. Please join with me in singing People of Hope with Daryl Iacono. And one comment note in the chat box about the Portage Church using Zoom and Facebook simulcast. So.
Good morning, everyone. It's hard to believe in the sun in the dark of the night, and it's hard to believe in the stars in the bright morning lights. Well, we all need a place we can go to learn what is real, to ponder the depths of the soul where truth is revealed. Oh, this is our place. This is our home. Working and seeking, we're never alone. In this mortar and stone, these windows and walls, love's earthly home. It's bread for the journey, oil for the flame, for people of love, people of hope, people of change. It's hard to believe there is peace when war rages on. And it's hard to believe there is love in hate's raging throng. But for every brave soldier, a peacemaker takes their own stand. And for every soul long turned away, there waits a new hand. Oh, let it be. Let it be. Here in love's dwelling, we people love change. We're living out love, living out hope, living out change. Sing out for love, sing out for hope, sing out for now I believe in the sun in the dark of the night.
Thank you, Daryl. Closing words today are written by Chris Rothbauer. May our lives be reflections of the beauty, peace, and joy that is possible in the world. And may the love we find in this place sustain us as we go our separate ways. May it be so. Blessed be. Go now in peace. And now I encourage you to stay online for our Zoom coffee hour if you wish to continue discussion, rekindle old relationships, or make new friends.